Hi and good evening, everyone. I'm Ella Townsend, the Young Talent Coordinator at Film Hub Midlands, who manages and oversees the BFI Film Academy programme for the Midlands region. I work closely with cultural arts organisations, venues and young people across the Midlands to provide a wide range of exciting activities and opportunities. You're about to watch a recording of a BFI Film Academy lab session on securing the bag, what you need to creating a funding application by Goggin and Caragh Davison. This session is for aspiring and emerging filmmakers who are wanting practical and creative insights into what is needed to create a funding application for short films. BFI Film Academy Labs are all about helping 16 to 25-year-olds break into the screen industries. These monthly practical sessions are led by industry professionals with a focus on explaining the specifics of working in film and television and developing your skills to become the best screen creative you can be. These labs are programmed across 3 strands, which are storytelling, business of film, and career ladder. We hope you enjoy today's session.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for coming. I'm Georgia Goggin, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm here with Caragh.
Thanks, Georgia. Hi everyone, I'm Caragh Davison, my pronouns are she, her.
So how we're going to do this, I've got some slides which I'm going to talk through, and then Caragh, I'm going to hand over and Carah's going to jump in whenever there's something that she wants to add. Hopefully we'll cover what's useful, and then as Ella said, there's going to be some time for questions at the end, so if we miss anything, do let us know. So this is securing the bag, what you need to create a funding application. First problem, can't change the slide, there we go. So Caragh and I can do a bit of an intro to our work and sort of, I guess, why we're qualified to tell you about this. These are some of the films that I've made, along with a bit of information about who funded them, which organisations, and therefore which organisations I applied to. So I am, like you guys, a filmmaker. I regularly have to apply for funding. I know how hard it is and how intimidating it can be and how gutting it can be when you're unsuccessful. And I have from time to time been successful and been lucky enough to make these films, among others. But I also have another role, which is that I receive funding applications. I'm a development executive for a film fund called the Uncertain Kingdom, which is predominantly a feature film fund, so probably is less relevant to the audience this evening. But from time to time, we do also fund short films. So I've had a lot of applications through the Uncertain Kingdom for shorts. I mean, literally thousands that I've assessed. So yeah, we're not open for short film funding right now. I feel like I should say that at the top, but we have seen a lot of applications. And next is Caragh's.
Thanks, Georgia. And yeah, so I guess I predominantly work in development. I spent 5 years at the BFI, which I feel like I recognise a lot of names in the chat from those days, which is really nice. So I was kind of across a lot of BFI Network's new talent work, assessing a lot of applications. I used to run our talent labs like Network LFF and at the time Weekender. Baba there is a short film that I executive produced through the More Films for Freedom scheme. So again, lots of kind of assessing funding applications there. I left BFI sort of 2 years ago to go freelance and have been doing various kind of work and projects since then as a script editor and again sort of working on labs. Last year I created the kind of BFI and BMW filmmaking challenge with Michaela Cole as our mentor, so again assessed all of the applications that came into that, the short film applications. We Collide is one of the films that we made as part of that funding program. And then currently I've just opened the Dark Room, which is a new development lab in partnership with Trans on Screen, which is a feature genre lab for trans and queer writers. So yeah, very familiar with reading applications, reading scripts, and always very happy to let people know anything that I can that might be useful in making a good one.
Nice. Okay, so the first thing I would say when you're making an application, what I try to do myself, is first of all just to take a deep breath, and before I rush in and think about what they might want, first of all to ask myself, like, what do I need to think about before we get involved? Because it's very easy to kind of rush ahead or apply for something that isn't actually really relevant, and consequently spend quite a lot of time doing a lot of work that doesn't really get you anywhere. So the first thing to ask is, who are you pitching to? If you're not clear about who they are and spending a bit of time imagining what they might want from you, it's easy to make mistakes. I think, is that fair to say, Cara?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like from experience working somewhere like BFI, there's always a lot of really interesting, I guess like misconceptions about what the funder might be looking for and what kind of makes a great project. And I think oftentimes they're actually quite open. And so it's really just kind of digging into the material they've put online and you know, they'll give a sort of an idea of what they want. But essentially, I think your point earlier about sort of really thinking about yourself is first and foremost what's most important, and kind of considering how you, if you have a project that is right for that certain, you know, fund, company, whatever it is you're pitching to.
And this line here about they want to give you the money, I say this really anytime I'm talking to new filmmakers, because until I was on the other side of it and having the experience of working at the Uncertain Kingdom, I had no idea that, I used to imagine that people, you know, that people were reading my applications with this sort of like arms crossed, you know, sitting on a big pile of money saying, go on, impress me. And it just isn't like that at all. You're actually like, I don't know if you find this, Caragh, but like desperate to read a really good application, and you're so excited when one comes through, and you know, you just want to give away the money.
Yeah, so true. Like I always say to people, like, you're looking for reasons to say yes, not to say no. Like I'm just like, please just tell me like how amazing you are, how amazing your project is. Like I want you to be amazing. And I want the project to be something that's really exciting. And yeah, I think you're exactly right in that when you're on the other side of it, you can maybe feel that like, especially when obviously we know a lot of funds that come up they do have so many applications and you are up against a lot of other people. But there is genuinely like nothing more exciting when you're assessing, when you've like gone for a few and you're like, oh, okay, you know, these are fine. And then you see one that's like amazing and you're like, this is so sick, this is so exciting. Like that's what you're always looking for.
Yeah, I think that is so right. So with that in mind, I think what you said, Cara, about like, you know, these funds are quite open, they put all their information online. This is so basic, but it is amazing how often people don't do this. Find the guidelines, make sure they're the current guidelines, really, really read them with a fine-tooth comb, make sure everybody in your team has read them, and spend time pulling out all of those key details, all that information. And then if there's a form that they ask you to do, if it's not just a kind of free email application, but there is some kind of online form, like really, really, really do that form. Because if you do that, you are already miles ahead than I would imagine, depending on the fund. I mean, from what we see at Uncertain Kingdom, probably 20% of the competition just straight away, just from having actually done the form. Is that your experience?
Yeah, it's a really like, it sounds so obvious to say, but it's such a good point. And I think that whenever anything opens or something like this, you do your best when you're kind of on the side of creating these things to put as much information out as you possibly can and kind of make it as clear. And obviously there's always going to be things that might get missed, and that's why there's kind of always, you know, there's often FAQ pages and things like that, or like, you know, an email address where you can ask someone. But I would say like whenever I've worked across any kind of fund, 90% of the questions you get through to the kind of inquiries inbox is something that is already on your website and it's already there. It's already been kind of like outlined in the guidelines or the FAQs or whatever it might be. So I would just say like really spend some time like thoroughly reading through them, as George is saying. And then also as well, like take the time. Like I think oftentimes the application window is going to be a few weeks, hopefully at least, and just don't feel that you need to like rush to get your application in first. Like, you know, oftentimes you will see applications that come in quite quickly and maybe the time has not really been spent on them and it really does show, whereas actually the reason that application window exists is for you to take your time to think about how you want to respond to the questions, to think about what materials are kind of best for you to submit, and put your best foot forward. Essentially, like there's no benefit to applying quickly, essentially.
Yeah, there really
Yeah.
isn't. I mean, you have to assess everything. Nobody is, you know, just going, oh well, you know, we've seen enough now, let's just skip over all these applications. You always read everything. So yeah, there's no advantage whatsoever to being early, but there's a lot of advantage to you in doing a draft at the beginning of the application window, sleeping on it a few weeks, having another look, having somebody else look at it. You know, maybe something in your project's even changed in that time that becomes interesting to add, and so on. I would say my main thing when I'm putting together an application myself is that I try and look at the application form overall, much as you might a kind of GCSE essay question. I mean, I just remember, I don't know if you had this at school, Cara, but just being drilled and drilled and drilled on a persuasive argument. You know, it's like you're just making a case, and there should be nothing on that form or in that essay that doesn't further your case.
Mm.
And you know, you've usually got a really limited word count that is spread probably across all of the questions. There's probably, you know, a 200-word bio, or you know, whatever it is, and you don't want to repeat any information ever because you don't have enough words. If you've said it in one place, don't say it again. And don't ever just take your usual bio and just drop it in, because it's an opportunity to finesse that bio to give them exactly what they want. So just for example, there's a real trend in funding applications for like buzzwords like bold or audacious or whatever. Make sure you've said those words back to them. Make sure, like, make it really easy for a reader to see why they should fund you, and that you've read everything really carefully, that you understand what they want from you, and that you fit everything that they've asked for. And by pulling out all of those key words and key concepts that they want to see from you, and making sure that they're appearing throughout your application, it's going to make their life so much easier. And it also helps you organise your thoughts, whether this fund is even right for you. You know, if you're doing those forms and you just find it, you cannot find any information about yourself or your project that responds plausibly to those guidelines, then it's probably not the fund for you, and this is potentially a bit of a waste of time. Let's do some silly mistakes. I have to kind of rejig somehow Zoom because it's like covers up my screen. So these are some silly mistakes that happen over and over again, or that I see anyway. Links that don't work, such a bummer. Paywalls, very cool if you have work behind a paywall, you know, props to you, but also really annoying because now we can't watch it. And you might assume like, yes, everyone's got Netflix or whatever, but depending on the funder employee situation, they might not be at home on their home Netflix or whatever. So, you know, consider that. Yeah, full name. You would be amazed how many people apply. Fred is a writer-director, you know, is he? I mean, is he that famous? I'm not familiar with Fred. Info that doesn't match. I quite often see applications where it obviously was called something once, but is now called something else, but you've got a document with an old title, and it just makes you feel like, especially when you're thinking about producers, because when you're looking at directors and writers, you're very often looking at work specifically. But when you're thinking about funding the producer, and you are typically funding the producer, that's the person you're going to pay the money to, you are looking for somebody who's like got their shit together. And just little stuff like that just gives you the feeling like, ooh, they might not have a complete grip on this. AI is a big part of some people's lives now, definitely not mine because I'm a massive Luddite. But it's interesting seeing how it's coming into applications. And we recently had this actually assessing features for the Uncertain Kingdom. But it was the first round where it was like, oh, people are really, really doing this now. And when people use it to write their answers, I mean, it is so, that makes you sound so dumb. Because there's, you know, that episode of Friends where Joey uses a thesaurus to try and write an application, to write a letter of recommendation. It makes you sound like Joey's thesaurus, and AI writes dumb stuff like, our goal is to raise the budget for the film, and it's like, what a waste of words. Like, I know that, of course you are. You're applying for money. So I just don't do it, and it's a missed opportunity to express your personality, which is all we care about. All we care about is you as filmmakers. AI images are really weird. Like they've got that like slightly uncanny feeling, and having like generating an image with somebody who looks like a bit like an actor we know, but not quite. It really gives every reader at the Uncertain Kingdom all got the creeps from a particular application that did that, and it's really off-putting. And also having images from real films in your application, if that's what's, you know, if they're asking for a visual treatment, it tells us about your cinema literacy. It tells us about your taste. It tells us about how you see films and what interests you in cinema. If you just generate from AI, it tells us about AI's taste in cinema. It doesn't tell us about yours. So it's a missed opportunity. Do dive in here any time, Cara. I'm just waffling on.
Yeah, no, it's good. No, the AI thing is a really interesting one because it's something last year that on the BMW fund saw a lot, and like full treatments that were made by AI, and it's so interesting because I can see why people are drawn to it. Of course I can, especially when funding applications, treatments, like they take so much of your time, and sometimes it can feel like really thankless work because you're doing it for free, trying to get someone to give you money essentially, and it's a lot. But I would also just think about like the value that you get in doing that work yourself, like the ways in which it can like really help like push your project forward when you're forced to like do an application and like write about it in a certain way. I think it can be just really, really valuable. I mean, I think a lot of us work well with deadlines. It can be really helpful for kind of like getting a certain draft done or something like that. But yeah, the AI of it is just absolutely wild, and everything George is saying would totally agree. Like, please don't use it. And also it's like so obvious when it is used. And I think sometimes people really think they're being like quite smart and like, oh no, this is great. This just sounds super, this just sounds really smart and is better than what I can write. And it's not, because what you can write is going to have so much more like of your personality and warmth to it. You know, we're not funding AI for anything. Yeah,
Absolutely. Another line I think that is very hard to tread and is a personal judgment when you're applying for things is like that, like what is sassy, what is sneaky, what's just breaking the rules in a really off-putting way. And there's no kind of right answer on that. You know, there'll always be someone who emails for an extension, you know, with a valid or not sounding reason. There'll always be somebody who says, you know, I don't have everything, all the qualifications you asked for, but, you know, and depending on the fund, you might be successful, you might not be. But only speaking for myself, I personally find it really off-putting when an applicant, especially if they haven't talked about it with us first, like and sent an email about it first, but when an applicant very sort of deliberately does something that is a sort of against our form, you know, against the materials that we've asked for, because it shows a sort of disrespect to our process and sort of decide like it's like the applicant has made the decision that they know what we need more than we know what we need, and it makes it really hard if someone hasn't given us what we need to assess their project against everybody else's, because there'll be some piece missing or different. So for example, you know, we ask for a visual treatment and then for some reason they decide they're not going to give us a visual treatment, they're going to give us something else, they're going to give us, you know, 1,000 extra words, you know, on a PDF or whatever. It is really off-putting, and again, to the point of kind of you're sort of assessing the producer, for me it makes me feel like, is this producer going to be a bit of a pain? Do they kind of think the rules don't apply to them? And if that's the case, are we going to have trouble with budgets, and are we going to have trouble with delivery deadlines and that kind of thing? So that always slightly puts me off.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And also like the amount of people that email after the deadline and are like, oh hi, I just found out about this, can I apply? Sorry, no. And also emailing after the deadline to be like, oh, it's like very like dog ate my homework vibes, and it's like, oh, I've just tried to submit and it wouldn't let me, but you're like doing it 2 hours later than the deadline already was. Like, I always, with anything like this, if someone emails me like before the deadline saying they have a problem, I'm like, cool, great, we can work it out, don't worry, it's fine. As moment like that deadline is over, it is a little bit like, oh, come on, like you're trying it on a little bit, so please don't.
Yeah. I think I said this a minute ago, but like, yeah, repeating yourself through the application is just a bit of a waste. If you have any opportunity to present something visual, take it, do it the max. Some applications will offer you to write something or to do a video. It's a visual medium, even if it's literally just like this, like, you know, videoing yourself, headshot, talking head. it's immediately better, because it's your personality and you're a filmmaker. So if there's any opportunity to make it visual, the answer is always yes. Put your contact information in there. Most forms will obviously get this from you automatically, but if they haven't for some reason, like, make sure your contact information is there, and make sure it's on all of your documents, because it just makes everybody's life easier. And before you apply, to make sure that you're not wasting your own time, have a look at what that fund has funded previously, if it previously existed, and whether your film is anything like what they previously funded. And that goes sort of two ways. It's one is, have they done exactly this before, and therefore they probably won't do your film? Or do they fund just a completely different kind of film? They fund horrors and you want to make a rom-com or whatever. So just kind of having a sort of sensible conversation with yourself about whether it's really the right fund for your film.
I guess another one I'd add as well is around like making sure the way in which you like talk about your script. So something that I see a lot, especially in funding applications, is be like, my script is about ABC and this is all the things that we want to do with our script. And then you read the script and like none of that is present and it feels quite different. And I think just making sure that those two things match up is really, really important when you're trying to get support for an idea. Because I think that's one of the like things that I feel a lot of people do fall down, is because they have these like incredible ideas about like what they want their work to be about, but sometimes it's just not really landed on the page of that project. So I think just really interrogating as much as you can, here is my script, here is what it's doing, how can I like talk about that in a way that also feels true to what that script actually is.
I think that's absolutely spot on, and sort of related to that would add, there is no need in your application to review your own application. You don't have to describe your work as original, dazzling, never before seen. Like let the fund decide that. You don't need to do that. And I'd also say, like, I wouldn't worry that much about being original. Like, the chances of you making there's thousands of shorts made a year. The chances of it being like sparklingly original are basically nil. But if you are honest about who you are as a person and your particular tastes and interests, your personality will kind of shine through that lens and it will make it fresh. So trust that more than you sort of having to say you've never seen a story like this before, because we definitely have. We've been telling stories for millennia. So anything you can do to let your personality or your personality as a team come through is worthwhile doing. What's next? Not that. This, yes. So yeah, why are you pitching at all? Really, really, really interrogate whether you're ready. Look at that fund, because the funding opportunities are so few and far between to make something with a decent pot of money. I would say, almost as a rule, if you're starting to make shorts now, probably make 2 or 3 using your phone and whatever you've currently got in your house before you apply for money, unless the fund is specifically to make super, super, super early shorts for, you know, very, very small amounts of money. I wouldn't go through it, because you've got everything you need to make shorts in your pocket, and you can totally do that and get on and make some of those early mistakes and start figuring out who you are as a filmmaker, and figuring out who your people are and who your teammates are and who you get on with and what kind of stories you want to tell, and make some of your early worst, silliest mistakes. And then once you start to know who you are, you can apply for some of those funds with a bit of a story about yourself, which really matters.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And just thinking about, like, I really love when people can really articulate what this fund or opportunity can bring to them that they wouldn't necessarily have otherwise, and like why this specifically will help you. I think obviously it's kind of, if you're not, it's exactly what George is saying, if you're not telling that kind of story about your career, then you're leaving the person who's reading the application to like make assumptions, and those assumptions might not always be correct if they don't have all of the information. So I think that as much as you can sort of say, like, this is what I've done previously, this is what I really want to do next, this is why I'm doing it, this is why I need your fund to do it, like really like convince on that. And also like really don't be afraid to like highlight areas that you want to improve on and like mistakes you might have made. Like being self-aware is like like such a gift to any creative, like to be able to say like, oh, you know, actually I did that and maybe that was good that I tried it, but it didn't quite work, and in my next film I want to test this out a little bit more and figure it out. Like seeing that as like a, you know, a funder or whoever is on the other side, like I love seeing that in filmmakers, because I think if they can kind of really figure out what it is they want to work on and drill down, like you have more confidence giving them that support, and you really want to like help them do that as well. Like it's just another way of like feeling like you're getting people really on your side and wanting to like root for you and support you.
100%. I agree with all of that. So having decided that you are going to apply to our sort of fictional fund, you will need a bunch of materials, and it will vary depending on the fund that you're applying to. And I sort of describe them as falling broadly into two buckets, which is the kind of the flesh and the bones. And the flesh is like the fun stuff, like your visuals, a Spotify playlist, all of your other films, all of that stuff. And the bones is, okay, well, what actually is this? It's the budget, it's the schedule, when will it happen, who's doing it, and so on. Together, I would say, and this goes back to Caragh's point about telling that story about yourself and, you know, where are you going and what are you trying to improve on, and all the rest of it. It is so exciting as a funder, and I think there's some psychological trick that I'm not qualified to talk about, but there is something to do with wanting to support people who are already doing it. For some reason, it is really not exciting to fund somebody who is just at a stop, and that your funding is going to be the thing that makes them move. For some reason, that's not exciting, and I don't know any fund that kind of tries to do that. Funds seem to always be trying to be the thing that enables you to go faster, smoother, cleaner, with a bigger train, whatever, but we want the train to already be moving. And so what you're using all of these materials that we can talk about to do is to show that you are the train that's already moving. Mm-hmm. And also they have, I think to a certain extent, what you're trying to do with your materials is to build a picture of the film that is so three-dimensional and so comprehensive that making it feels almost like a formality. It's like it almost exists already in a way. And that's a good discipline to have as a producer, really, anyway, and as a director anyway, because that's how you communicate really effectively to your heads of department and to whoever else you need to persuade to help you make your film. But when you're speaking to funders, it makes it them feel like, well, sure, you know, we'll do this tiny thing and it's going to be the final 2% that makes the movie, but it almost feels like it's already happened and it's very exciting.
I think that's really interesting. I guess to add to that as well, I just sort of say like, so I think that is a good analogy, and sort of from experience working on sort of like the BFI Network Short Film Fund, you would definitely have people who might apply who there'd potentially be a bit of a question mark as if they don't get this funding, is that kind of that, like they're trying this one thing and then, okay, that didn't work, we're going to give up. And I think, you know, there's this sort of element of like, you want to support people that are like in it for the long haul, that really want to commit to being a filmmaker. And it's not to say like, you know, when Georgia says like these things are already happening, obviously we know that like money is the thing that is the hardest to get, and like that's not something that everyone has access to and is like really challenging. But there are so many things that you can be doing for your project that cost nothing, that show that you are on that moving train. So whether it is having those conversations with those HODs, or it's like pulling together these documents, pulling together these kind of moods, looking at locations, whatever it might be, that's kind of really you investing into this project, investing into your wider career. Like, what does that look like? Yeah, it's really about kind of wanting to pour into someone who you think is committed and really wants to do this, and then you're like, great, I want you to do this too, and I can help you with this. Like, that's so sick.
Absolutely. So this is my anyway, that you may have other things to add, Caragh, and you know, anyone listening, you might have more than this, but these are the things that I think essentially are your flesh. They're the fun stuff. They're the stuff that in a meeting very often it will be the director or the writer talking about, and the producer will often talk about the other elements. Although I personally wouldn't observe that line too specifically because I'm quite a creative producer, but producers vary. So the thing to say about these is like, kind of like we said before, like make sure they all match. You know, is your log line, if you've updated the script, should you have another look at that log line and just make sure that they really zip together really nicely? Likewise, is your pitch deck now sitting really neatly with the script? Like make sure it all just zips up super, super, super tight. You can do really fun stuff like mood reels. Again, like you can make a mood reel that makes it feel like the film's already made. Like your vision for it can be so clear. If there's something really tricky that you want to do, maybe it's worth trying to do a camera test where, you know, you're not doing any costume, you're not getting your real actors, maybe it's your brother, but you just want to try out this funny little effect. Maybe show that, so that if any funder reading a script is like, okay, this is interesting, but this is a really weird technical trick, how are they going to do that? You can go, yeah, already done it, works a treat. Just anything you can do to just make it feel really, really complete.
Yeah, I think that's a really good list. And also, like you said earlier, if there is an opportunity to do a video statement, always do them, because like genuinely the reason they work is because you're looking in someone's eyes and you feel bad saying no to them. So if someone's like telling you all these amazing things and you're like, oh my God, like you can see them, like it does make an application come alive more. So if you can muster up, I know it's cringe, like talking to like a little, like recording yourself talking about your project, like some people are very much a natural at that, others aren't. I've had to do them for projects before, like you kind of hate doing them, but they do really help.
They do. And also
yeah.
I would say, even if you feel like you're not a natural at it, or you know, it makes you mumble, or it makes you feel really incoherent or whatever, maybe you are really incoherent, to a certain extent it almost doesn't matter, I would say, because it's you as a person, and if your idea is good and it makes sense for you as a person and you're clearly passionate about it, like we're not looking for somebody to do a TED talk, you know, that's not, you're not auditioning to do this, you're auditioning to be behind the camera, and your passion and your excitement for your project is the piece that we want to see. So I feel like even if it makes you like mortified, it can that almost can be to your credit.
Yeah.
So Bones. Oh, where's Bones gone? There's Bones. The boring bit. We know what Bones is. It's your budget, it's your timeline, it's your shooting schedule. I'll say a thing about the timeline. I think as a producer, the timeline is almost one of your most important things, because it's you saying like, this film will be shot in April next year, and then you reverse engineer to make it happen. And the April next year might be the most totally random time, but at some point you just have to say like, this is when it's going to happen, and it's on you to make it happen. And so when we're looking as funders, like when we're looking at this timeline, seeing it all laid out and seeing what a producer is going to do to hit all those targets before that time, and obviously if the fund itself has a timeline, make sure your timeline matches it. That can be really exciting to see a producer just really on it and knowing what they want to achieve between all of those dates. You can be really proactive in teaming up with other organisations, partnerships, in-kind support, doing training, talent development. Again, it's this like making it bigger, like, and it means for your funder, it's almost more value for money for them. Like if they know that they can give you this little snippet of money and it can actually have this bigger impact in your community, or for the training of underrepresented groups, or whatever it is, you can just make it feel like it's bigger and more real. I keep doing this gesture. I mean, it's becoming international sign language for the film, but that is what you're trying to do.
Definitely. And also, like, you know, look, your budget, your finance plan, things like that, we know that you're guessing at this point, and you're making like educated guesses, and you're asking people to maybe give you a quote, but it really is like, until you have the actual money and you know exactly how much you're working with, you are just making your best estimations. And so, you know, I think don't stress too much about it feeling like, well, that might shift slightly later on, that's fine, that's conversations you can have with your exec, like that's not a problem, but you need to have something down that is realistic, like that is like achievable, and we need to see that you've like considered every aspect of that production. We you know, and that's exactly how George is saying, how we can also kind of have confidence in you as a producer delivering this project, basically, is that, you know, you're just showing that you know what you're doing, and yeah, it's up in the air right now, but
Yeah.
this is kind of what I would do.
Yeah, exactly. So long as you haven't pulled a number from the sky, so long as there's it's based on something, it's completely fine. And you can, you know, there's usually a spot in your budget or column in your budget where you can say, you know, it's based on a quote, or brackets, it's an allowance, you know, more research to come, or whatever.
Yeah.
This is the most important thing. We keep on coming back to this. So just to make it really super clear, you are the most important thing in the application, you as a team. Where you've come from, where you're going, how this film fits into the picture, it is the most important thing. So make sure it's really coming across in that application.
Yeah, agree.
So this question, what happens next? Most funds I've applied to, this has been an element of what they've asked for. And I think even if a fund didn't, as a producer and as a team, I really recommend that you do consider this, because if you're not thinking about this from the beginning, you miss opportunities to make a success out of the end of the film. It's thinking about, like, what is this film for? And shorts have many outcomes. You know, some of them are seen by literally thousands and thousands, even millions of people online. Some films are hardly seen by anybody, but the people that they are seen by can be game changing. You know, it might be that you make some like absolutely bonkers experiment that you never show to anyone except a potential funder like the BFI, who goes, hey, they're onto something here, this is exciting, and will give them money, and then you bury that film forever, which is a completely legitimate thing to do. So it's for you to figure out why you're making this film and how it fits into that overall strategy of your film career.
Yeah. I like, yeah, definitely from the perspective of assessing for kind of BFI, like it is as much about you and your wider career as it is about anything. Like I think you have this kind of like sort of thing in your mind when you're assessing of like, what are the real like tangible benefits that you can give someone? And like obviously money, yes, we know money is great in this context. But also it's like, how is this gonna like elevate your like portfolio of work? What is this going to bring that you don't have already? What are you doing? Like, are you proving a concept for a bigger project? Are you proving you can work in a certain genre? Like, what are you trying to do with this project that is going to like push your career further forward? Tell us that, invest us in that as much as you can. And when you're thinking about where that film goes, why? Like, what do you want to get out of those spaces? Like, are you making a film because you just like cannot wait to get it in front of audiences and that really excites you? Great, tell us. Are you making it because you want to kind of, like George is saying, get in those certain rooms and you want it to like propel you into a different space? Cool, what's that space? Why do you want to be there? Like, add in as much as you can about that kind of wider context of where this project sits for you, because it's kind of not as simple as just kind of, I'm a filmmaker and I want to make this project, full stop. Like, I need to know everything around it, or as much as possible.
And, you know, and if you'd want to have a festival campaign, that's a line in your budget. You know, if that's really important, make sure that there's a line in your budget for that. I think, you know, as a case study for you all, I work with a filmmaker called Dion Edwards. We've worked together for years, and we made a film called High Miss, which we had not initially planned to make. We wanted to make a film called We Love Moses, which ended up being the 5th film that we made. And the reason it was the 5th and not the 4th is because the London Calling Plus funding that we needed to make We Love Moses, when I went and looked at that application form, the amount of achievements that they wanted us to have done before we applied, I mean, it just felt crazy to me. It felt so far away. I mean, I always say I was reading down the list and I thought it was going to end with, you know, have won a BAFTA. Like, it was so out of our reach. And so I said to Dion, we need to make one more film. It's going to have to cost us, you know, next to nothing. And it's got to demonstrate to Film London that we are qualified to apply for the money we wanted for We Love Moses. And we knew that it had to go to a certain number of festivals and it needed to be on a certain theme. And we literally built this film and made it just in order to do a successful application to Film London. We did make High Miss. It did do all the things we wanted it to do, thank goodness. And then we applied to Film London and were successful and made We Love Moses, which unlocked the next stage, which was our feature, Pretty Red Dress. And I think thinking strategically like that enables you to be planning your career several films ahead of time, and not going ahead of yourself, you know, and sort of exposing yourself, your projects ahead of time, you know, getting it at the right stage. The other thing to say about festivals, I think being really honest about beforehand, and also once you've actually made your film, like, what is this film? You know, it is really, really, really okay to be like, do you know what? It's not a Sundance film. You know, it's not good enough yet, or it's not glossy enough yet. You know, that those top tier festivals, they program normally really expensive and normally quite long shorts. And if you've made, you know, a 3-minute film for £100, it's probably not for them. And that is okay. But there are loads of festivals where that is going to be spot on, where you can find an audience and you can find some celebration. So just be really honest about what you've made, and that, like Caragh said, like, self-knowledge is so important in a filmmaker in assessing their career. What's next? But equally, if not more important, your next film. I mean, we keep saying it, we're way ahead on all of these slides, but yes, what are you making next? This is to Caragh's point about being emailed afterwards. Oh, I've just seen this. It is so important to get on top of all of these funds before you actually need the money. And so make it a part of your practice to be constantly scouring for new opportunities, even when you don't particularly have a film you want to make. Because obviously there's one thing of like coming up with films that you want to make and then finding a fund to fit them. But the other way of doing it is seeing a fund and going, oh, that's an interesting brief, and making something towards that fund. And both are completely valid. And sometimes it's a case of smashing your film towards a fund, and that works too. So make sure you're signed up to all those mailing lists, you're getting all this information ahead of time, you're speaking to other filmmakers, you're going to events. I mean, you guys are on it, you're on this right now. That stuff really matters, because then you're not the person emailing saying, oh, sorry, I just missed it.
Yeah, especially when, you know, like, that is one of the benefits we have of social media, is that a lot of these kind of opportunities are posted about a lot. They get a lot of traction. So when someone messages you being like, oh, I didn't see it, you're like, sorry, where have you been? Maybe you've been on holiday, in which case, great, good for you. We all need holidays. But keeping up to date with things is so important. And I think, you know, obviously you're on this, you're probably in the loop with BFI Network, but their mailing list is amazing. And it does kind of show opportunities from all over the industry as well. They're not just posting about their own opportunities. Anywhere that's doing that is really helpful. There are so many WhatsApp groups around of like directors in this sort of space, producers here, queer filmmakers here. Like, there are so many groups like that exist already, that if you're just talking to people, you will find out about them. They're not always publicly advertised, which is obviously frustrating, but getting out and chatting to people, finding your own networks is the best way to just kind of keep up to date with what's going on, and also meet people that you can potentially collaborate with and work with. Like, you know, you're all joining or in the same industry, we're all working together. You know, when you meet someone who you think is interesting, don't be afraid to follow up and kind of build that relationship with them. It doesn't always have to be you know, with a project specifically in mind, but I think especially if we're talking about short film funding, I mean, it's tough out there, I can't lie. Like, the funds are few and far between, and they do pop up in the most random places a lot of the time. Like, you know, you have your kind of stalwarts like your BFI Network, and BBC Film and Film 4 do fund shorts as well, but they fund less shorts, and it's often very much kind of if they want to kind of build a relationship and do a feature with you. But there is so often kind of just random brands and companies that feel they want to give some money into some shorts, and it's hard to kind of keep track of all of those, but they are often on a BFI Network newsletter and things like that.
It's also worth thinking about, you know, your community, and not necessarily your local geographic community, but other communities that you're in that maybe aren't film focused, but might be interested in supporting you as a person or some other aspect of your life. I mean, this is absolutely years ago. When I was still living at home, my mum lived in, honestly, a hamlet, and it happened to have a little fund for people who, like, young people who lived in the hamlet. And I got something like £300, and it paid for the van that drove stuff for my grad film. And it was so random, but just that little thing just that made such a difference. And they were happy that it was a film, but it could have been for anything. So like just keeping your ear to the ground and making that a routine part of what you do is a big part of producing. Opening a company. This was a bit of a sort of side thing, but I think it is worth talking about. Really speaking to the producers here, you may feel in a hurry to open a limited company because it feels professional and grown up and makes you legit and all of those things. That is all true, but really, really, really don't rush it. As and when it actually is the right time, it will cost you, I think, £13 and take you about 20 minutes. So you can do it very quickly as and when you need to. But as soon as you've taken on an enormous legal and financial responsibility that will cost you literally thousands of pounds a year. So don't do it unless it really is worth it. Some funders will only fund a company, and if that's the case, then it becomes worth it to open it. But you won't need to open it to apply. And if you do, and they're asking, email and say, I don't have a company yet, but were I successful, I would open a limited company. And any funder pushing you any sooner than that just doesn't make sense. I'd be astonished if they did. Hold back on that as long as you can, because it just generates a lot of stuff that is off topic for this webinar. But just to say, like, don't rush into it.
That's a good point.
Thank you so much, both. That was amazing. We've had so many questions. I'm literally trying to keep up with them. We've had 32, and I've answered 2 of them in the chat.
Okay.
I'm just going to start right from the top. So this is from Anonymous. Is it possible to get funding before you write the script if you need to use a small % of the fund to do research / work with a charity if it's for a certain issue? If it's a certain issue, sorry.
I'd say for a short film, very, very unlikely. There is I don't think I really know of any short film development funding. Georgia, correct me if I'm wrong.
I've never heard of that either.
Yeah, it's not tends to be something that happens. For features, it's different. And for features, ideally, you would get development funding for your work to do exactly that research, and you would apply likely with a kind of treatment or an outline. But yeah, for shorts, not often the case.
Cool, sorry, lots of moving parts in the background. This is from Trevor Price. Any tips for applications from those who are not film graduates but have relevant experience if guidelines are explicitly asking for those from a film background? Is it worth reaching out to funders instead of applying?
It's hard to speak for all funds, but I would first of all really, really read the guidelines, and then read the FAQs. And then if you are really sure that that question hasn't been answered, then email and check whether your experience is applicable. I'm not that familiar with funds that want film graduates specifically. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but if you've got relevant experience, it's rare to be excluded.
Cool. And then we've got one from Fabio, who said, once you acquire the funds, where have you seen people go wrong in the past, especially for first-time winners?
That's a good question. I think because short film funding is very hard to get, and especially kind of a decent amount of money to make a short, I think it's really easy to put way too much pressure on yourself in making the kind of perfect film. And I think that I see so many filmmakers and teams, and especially really brilliant collaborators who break down over that pressure as well, which is really tough. So I think there's kind of 2 things there. I think the first thing is around like not striving for perfection. Like, you're trying to make the best film that you possibly can. Yes, there is always going to be things after you lock that film that you're like, oh, I should have done that, damn it. But the point is, you're showing potential, and like, it's that potential that will be spotted and will hopefully get whatever it is that you next want. And we watch there's things that you'll notice in your short that you won't love, that someone watching it for the first time won't even notice. So try not to let that pressure get to you. And then I think equally, then when you think about your like people that you're working with, like especially that writer, director and producer relationship, it's so important. And just making sure you're working with someone that you can really, both of you from like both sides, can like really trust, really rely on. You're going on like a really very long quite sometimes stressful journey together. And I'd just say, like, work with people where you really like champion each other and have each other's backs. That would be something that I would say. Georgia, do you have anything?
I mean, yeah, I totally agree with that. I've been very fortunate to work with wonderful people that I've wanted to work with again and again. And that to me is a career. Like, it's wanting to work with the same people again and again, and behaving in a way where they want to work with you again. Specifically on like where people go wrong, I would say, and I'd say this is true at Features as well, is I think it's very easy to get the money and then think of execs as being like quite scary or distant, or possibly characterizing them as having a different agenda to you, you know, being in some way opposed to your creativity or your what you want to do with the film, or they have restrictions, or they have ideas and they have notes and da 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 da. And actually, I would say treating execs as like your best and most valuable collaborator is the approach to take. Like, overshare with them. Way better for them to say, hey, cool, you know, you crack on, we didn't really need to know that or to sign off on that, than you kind of ghost them and they don't know what's going on with the film and start to worry. You know, when they give you notes, it is really hard. Take a deep breath. They are definitely not trying to ruin your film. Like, that is nobody's intention. So take a deep breath and try and take the note in the spirit in which it was intended, which is to help everybody improve the film. Yeah, they're your allies.
Thank you so much. So many more are coming through. So this is from Poppy, who said, does including a previs/test shoot in your application increase the film's favourability, and would you find this more or less appealing?
I mean, I would say anything that you can give is helpful. If you did a test shoot and it went really badly, maybe not.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, so it depends what happened on that test shoot. But if it was something that you think is like, yeah, emblematic of the film you want to make, and like definitely include it. But yeah, otherwise.
If it helps your argument, I mean, I have seen an application once a long time ago where they included test footage that just kind of demonstrated the film would be quite boring, and yeah, really went against them. And sometimes test footage, it's like you've kind of made it. Like, why would we fund it? So I would caution against that. But if it's helping with your argument, then yes, definitely include it.
Great, thank you. We have one from Kristen, who said, I'm a producer and venturing into directing. If I were able to apply with development producer and director short credits, would that be confusing, or is it good that I have these various filmmaking aspects to my story?
I think that the industry is becoming a little bit more kinder to people who work across various roles. I think, you know, a little while ago, it was kind of seen as a real mark against you if you were wanting to direct and you'd produced previously, whereas I think now actually a lot of people work in that way. It's hard to work in our industry, so as much as you can work, you should. I think it's just kind of really being clear about what it is you're doing on this project and what that is and what is the career that you're building. If you're ultimately wanting to build a career as a director, then great. Like, I think having those kind of producer credits is useful as well, especially if, you know, that is your kind of film background, that's kind of where you're coming from, that's the experience you have, that's great. But just kind of thinking about how you're sort of like very much approaching this with a director mindset, and from that aspect, and I guess making sure you've got another producer that you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. This is from Fabio again. If your short requires more money than the funding, are there ways or success stories you know that have managed to find ways to supplement their budget?
Yes, this is increasingly common now, I would say. BFI used to fully fund stuff and now typically doesn't. And so I think it's really normal to see finance plans come through from producers where it's, you know, X percentage is going to be from this fund that they're applying to, and then these are the other sources of funding. And again, in terms of assessing a producer, it's really exciting when you can see that a producer already has a real game plan and either has money in the bank or money guaranteed. And it's also, it's really fine to say that, you know, you will have this money, but it is contingent on getting, let's say, BFI or Uncertain Kingdom money. Lots of funders work that way, and you know, will say like, yeah, we'll definitely back you, but just get some other money first. It's infuriating, but just trying to find who will be that first money, and putting that finance plan together in a way where you're communicating to the fund you're applying to, like, when would you get that money? What is it based on? How in the bag is it? Is all absolutely fine. And I think also, if there's space to communicate it, if there's a couple of versions of the film, like, if, you know, if we get this, then we'll do this. If we don't get this, then it's the 5K version and we'll do it like this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think as well, like, money does just come from the most random places sometimes. Like, I think obviously you've got these kind of core funds, and you know, amazing if you can get like a BFI and a BBC on board, great, you'll make your short and that's your away. But that's not the case for a lot of people. So it's being creative with where you might be able to find that money too. Like, if your project has like a certain theme or subject matter, are there charities that you can approach? Look at who is giving money to charities. You know, I know filmmakers who've basically just found people who are like rich people, rich philanthropists who are interested in giving money to the arts because they care about a certain subject. Like, those people are out there. It's a big research job, but yeah, there's weird ways you can get money. There's kind of like, if you're a director who's working in advertising or commercials, like maybe you have rep there, they might be interested in putting some support into your short film. That happens quite a lot too. That can be worth looking into. But yeah, it's definitely rare that, you know, just because everything costs so much to make, that things can be made with one source of finance these days. And I guess tax credit as well, sometimes worth thinking about on shorts, not always, it depends on budget level.
Excellent, thank you. So this one came from I want to say Sonia, so I apologise if I've said that wrong. Who said filmmaking teams are expected to be more inclusive nowadays. Some characteristics, including gender, race, stand out. Others, such as neurodivergence, sexual orientation, do not. How can filmmakers go about identifying talent yet also propose inclusive teams?
So you mean, I guess I'm going to take that as you mean kind of finding collaborators where it's not immediately obvious kind of visually what their kind of background is, I guess. I think just find the networks. Like, there are queer filmmaking networks all over the place. There are queer like film nights that you can go to and meet people. Likewise, you know, you've got like DANK, which is the Disabled Artists Network, Disabled Artists Networks. Creative Network. Can't remember exactly what the acronym means, but they're great. Like, similarly, is like a really brilliant network for disabled creatives. Like, if you're kind of wanting to build a more inclusive team and people around you, like, there are a lot of those kind of organizations that exist specifically to connect people and bring people together. So yeah, again, it's a bit of a research job, but they are out there.
Sweet, okay. Oh, I'm working my way through. So this is another one from Sonia. If you think having previous work shown at a certain number of film festivals, how can you increase your chances to be included in festivals? As festivals receive thousands of submissions, and it seems really difficult to have one accepted.
It is really difficult. It is really difficult. And a long time ago, I watched one of the best shorts I've ever seen, which was an American-Mexican co-production. And I mean, I still think about that short. I just thought it was absolutely stunning. And I saw it at BFI London Film Festival. And I met the director afterwards, and he said that they were rejected from real, like, one-horse town, tiny, tiny, tiny Mexican festivals. And they were despairing that nobody wanted this short. And then they got into London Film Festival. So it is really hard. And also, we've all been to festivals and seen stuff that we think is absolutely shocking at festivals. So it is just hard, and it's hard for everyone. So you're not doing something wrong. That is just what it is. I would say you can increase your chances by making sure that you've got the full gamut of materials that festivals might want. Like, make sure you've got a poster, make sure you've got really good stills, make sure you've got really good log line, all of that stuff, so that your Film Freeway or whatever platform you're using, or, like, again, it's a persuasive argument. Like, make sure that you're doing all the things that they need you to do. And also make sure that you're submitting to festivals that fit your film really well. You know, there are, if you've made a horror, there are masses of horror festivals. Focus on those. Find the niche of your film, and concentrate on that, and prioritize. You know, maybe you don't submit to masses that cost lots of money. Maybe you submit to a handful that are expensive, that are a bit of a punt, and then you submit to loads that are less expensive or even free. Film Freeway, you can actually search for festivals that have no submission fee. Just be really careful what you submit to, that you're not giving rights away, because some of them are a bit dodgy.
Yeah, I would also say there's a really brilliant resource called the Short Film Toolkit, which was created by BFI, BAFTA and British Council, I think. So that's online, it's available for free, and it's like a just amazing PDF with loads of interviews with people, with festival programmers. There's like loads of info on like different festivals that look at genres. There's kind of information on how to kind of build a festival strategy. So that is kind of a really great document. It's in the chat, amazing. That is worth looking at if you've got a short and you're thinking about that. And the British Council in general are actually really lovely to short filmmakers, giving advice.
Cheers, thank you. Oh, we have, so I kid you not, 53 questions I'm trying to type into our spreadsheet here. So there was one that came right at the top, from Soren, apologies if I've said that wrong, who has said, do you think teenagers are taken seriously when applying for funding, and how can they get more recognition?
I don't know. I mean, I personally would take anyone seriously. I'm not looking at someone's age when I'm assessing something, as long as they're within the age of whatever that fund might be. Most of them, I guess, are 18 plus. But if you're applying, I mean, I guess Film Academy works a little bit younger a lot of the time. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I can't see a reason why you wouldn't be taken seriously. I think people are going to be very aware that you've likely not had the time to have as much experience, and that's fine. And as long as you're passionate and hungry, great.
It also may not be completely obvious that you're a teenager. Most funds gather kind of protected characteristics about their applicants totally separate, and they don't assess that information together with the application at all. So obviously you might be very fresh-faced on camera, but you know, maybe you're 20. So I would be surprised if people really know. So yeah, as long as you take yourself seriously, you'll be all right.
Well, and then that goes on to another question that said, how can an applicant convey that they are committed to being a filmmaker when they are still trying to establish themselves and probably have to dedicate time to work that pays the bills?
Yeah, I mean, we all do. Like, that is like a necessary of the industry, unless you have unless you're rich, you have financial backing, good for you, but most of us don't. So yeah, most people have a day job, and it doesn't need to be a filmy day job. Like, don't worry about that. I think as long as you are finding the time and energy to commit to your projects, that's the most important thing, and that will absolutely come through in an application. Like, you know, if someone's working a full-time day job that is entirely not related to film, and then they're putting in this amazing film application, I'm only going to want to support them more, because I'm like, you know, this person's working so hard, like, it's not easy at all to get into this industry. So yeah, I would definitely not worry about that looking negatively on you at all. If you can find a job that is like within the same space and sphere, that can be useful too. Like, you know, it's a good way of like making connections in the industry to like look at kind of assistant jobs, things like that, maybe on set jobs, depends what it is. I think I'd just always be mindful of how much your job gives you the creative like headspace and energy you need for your own projects. And just, yeah, be thinking about that.
100%, couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you. So there are two questions about funding. So Maria said, if I need funding, what's the best way to advertise my work? Is it similar to Patreon and Kickstarter? And then I know we touched upon it in earlier on, but are you typically seeing applications that ask for the maximum fund amount, or do people ask for different amounts? And is it beneficial to ask for less money? So it's like a triple question in one.
It's beneficial to ask for the amount of money that makes sense for your film. Don't lowball it if it's too low for your film. Don't ask for more than your film needs. Just don't try and like game the system. Just be honest about what your film needs. I'm not sure I understood the one about advertising. What was that?
It was around crowdfunding. So if I need crowdfunding, what's the best way to advertise my work? Is this similar to Patreon or Kickstarter?
I see. I quite slightly tap out on this because I feel like this is social media and I just don't do it.
Yeah, no, crowdfunding is really challenging. I think it's still out there, it still exists. Indiegogo, Kickstarter, they're all there. They're brilliant platforms that you can use. But when you're crowdfunding, you're really relying on the networks that you have and the spaces that you can get into. So I would always be mindful of like, yeah, who is around you that might be able to put into your crowdfunder. If they're likely only going to put into it once, make sure you use it for the project where you really, really need it, and you're not kind of, if you've got, oh, it's another year, another Kickstarter from me, you're probably going to get less support. Equally, if you're someone who like knows loads of rich people, go wild, do crowdfunders all the time, like get the money, great. But I think it's like it's a difficult one, and it relies very much on your network, your ability to kind of wrangle social media. There is situations in which you could like, Kickstarter especially, they will regularly like showcase certain projects and stuff. So again, I think the team there are quite friendly and open and sort of willing to chat to people on how they can make their projects stand out better. But yeah, it's not sort of my area of expertise.
This is from Paul. I'm going to take two more questions, sorry, because then we've hit our time. And this is from Paul, who said, I'm supporting a colleague who is profoundly deaf, uses British Sign Language to communicate, has written a script, but would like funding for a short film. Is there any support for that person to secure funding for a short film as barriers to access the funding?
Yeah, good question. I think I can't speak for every fund, but BFI, for example, will always have ulterior ways of submitting an application and additional support if you're kind of in a position where the application is a barrier to you. So again, it's kind of getting in touch with them and just flagging what it is you need, and they're very happy to help. A lot of companies, especially big companies like that, will have like specific budget set aside, which is purely to kind of make sure that people can access their applications in a way that is truly inclusive of them. So yeah, thinking about that. And then I guess like in addition to that, when it comes to production, just thinking about what additional access costs you might need, again, like write them into the budget from the off. Often big funds will have like a separate line of budget for that as well, which is great. And again, sort of looking at the networks like Dank and things that are out there that are specifically kind of supporting creators with disabilities is really useful too.
I would add to that, like 100% get in touch with any fund if you need something extra. And bear in mind that they may not know immediately what you need. You might need to do a little bit of hand holding for them to explain what your barriers are and what extra support would be helpful. Because it might be something that they haven't considered before. That for a lot of us, this is a learning space. So be prepared to do a bit of hand holding and hopefully get from them what you need.
Excellent. Okay, final question. There's too many. I know that you both have touched upon, your own film funds and the BFI funds, but is there a dedicated place on the internet where aspiring and emerging filmmakers are able to access a resource of funding opportunities?
I mean, short of the BFI newsletter, I would say no. Periodically, a site sort of attempts this, but the work required to stay on top of it, because as Caragh says, these little funds pop up and go, and a company does this and a brand does that, whatever. It is unfortunately on you to, scour the internet. And then, if you are lucky enough to find one, don't keep it to yourself. Money that's for you will find you. So if you find a fund, like make sure everybody knows about it. It's nice to share that stuff.
Yeah, agree.
Thank you very much for watching this BFI Film Academy lab session on Securing the Bag, What You Need to Create a Funding Application by Georgia Goggin and Caragh Davison. We hope you enjoy it. We run monthly digital labs and would love to see you at our next event in August. which is titled Producing Short Films by Film Hub North, a conversation led by award-winning BFI Network supported producer Holly Bryan. Holly will explain her journey into filmmaking, looking specifically at the role of the producer and how she started her career making short films. We will also explore the skills and experience needed for this role and the different entry points into the industry for aspiring producers. To find out more about this session, visit our labs webpage, which you can find in the video's YouTube description, and follow BFI Film Academy on all of our channels. Thank you and see you next time.